Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today I'm going to address possibly the most sinister activity that has taken place in the world, and of course it involves Shaitan. See, you have to know how Shaitan operates. In Surah Nisa, verse 119, he promised, this is what he promised: I will certainly mislead them, meaning humans, and delude them with empty hopes. So first one, misleading, then delude them with empty hopes, which is desire. And then he goes on to ordering them to slit the ears of cattle. It's like mutilation of animals. Then finally alter Allah's creation. That's his promise. What Allah said, that the cure to that is you do not take Shaitan as your guardian. And if you do, then you will certainly suffer a tremendous loss. So don't blame Allah. Allah has already told you how Shaitan is going to operate. And I'll show you how that has come to fruition. As a group, right after Shaitan has the biggest supporter of Shaitan, biggest agent is Bani Israel. We know from history, Yahud of Prophet's time, they were known to have bad intention. They had no mistake. They knew what is the truth. And yet, they decided to oppose Islam. Nasr, on the other hand, they had initially good intention, but they made mistakes. I will show you how the mistake was done. And because of adhering to the mistake without using aql, and we'll also discuss what aql is, the Nasara group also became the same. And this is the group in Surah Fatiha. Every day we said, we do not want to be like them. Maghdub and Dhalin. So Maghdub is Yahud, Dhalun is Nasara. And there's a hadith that Ummah, Muslims today, would follow Maghdub and Dhalun to the T. Footstep to footstep, from lizard hole to lizard hole. And that's what you're seeing today. So now let's describe what happens with aql. If you do not use aql, then you become the lowliest of creation. So Shaitan's target is to remove our aql, remove our ability to use aql, so he can mess us up completely. So we do not look at Allah as our guardian, we look at Shaitan as our guardian. And repeatedly you would see every scholar, every entity that promoted this culture is motivated by Shaitan. And biggest thing that happened to them is lack of aql. They tell things that completely nonsensical. It makes no sense. In history, we know that Prophet Adam and Eve were the first victim of Shaitan's deception. What did they do? They remove the ability to use aql. Shaitan told them something that Allah said the opposite, but they did not have the presence of mind to say, well, wait a minute. Why are you telling us something that Allah said opposite? So that was the first line of attack. But what happened, they did not go to the state where Shaitan could order them around. They repented. Next one, Kabil killed Habil. And what was the action? It was acted on last, bad intention. So there's no mistake in this one. The first one was mistake. And Allah does say that they were forced to be like that by Shaitan. But Kabil, there's no mistake. So it was dhalala, Prophet Adam, but he corrected quickly. And that's why if you have a dhalala, you identify, you go back, you are okay. But if you acted on bad intention, there is no dhalala involved. And there is no reprieve. You die in a state of kufr. Of course, Shaitan, this is the logic of Shaitan. When he said those things, he promised that I'll mislead them, I'll create false desire, I'll order to slit ears of cattle, order them to deface nature created by Allah, right? Those are the words, those are the four things Shaitan promised. Of course, he did not say inshallah, because that would be absurd. He has no ability to mislead, yet he promised that. And what is Allah's promise? If you take Shaitan as a guardian instead of Allah, you be the loser. So this verse actually tells us how to avoid Shaitan and also tells us how Shaitan operates. So this is the classic definition of aql. You have to have, there is no logic without major and minor premises. You have two types of logic. You might know that. Deductive logic, inductive logic. Both of them have major and minor premises. You cannot have a logic without both. Turns out, if all of the premises either missing or a false one, then it doesn't matter what conclusion is. It doesn't matter how close the conclusion looks to be logical. It has no meaning. So for a conclusion to be correct, you have to have major and minor premises both correct, true. But that's not enough. You have to have correct intention. And that comes from Book of Bukhari's first hadith. You see how important the intention is? Everything correct, but intention is not good, your conclusion is no good. You don't have to look at it. It has no meaning. That's why when these people come up with those nonsensical, and he said, you can back calculate your intention. You must not have a good intention behind it. Because no way Allah will misguide you. You must have taken Shaitan as your guardian. So what is a good intention? Intention to please Allah. That's the only good intention. You cannot say, well, my intention was good because I was doing for a good heart, I was trying to help. No, you are not supposed to be helping somebody. You are supposed to do everything for sake of Allah. Because your definition of help might be outrageous. So get it right now. Good intention means pleasing Allah, nothing else. Well, I was trying to make my husband happy. Well, that's fine. But that action, if it does not make Allah happy, then it's not enough that you're trying to please your husband. It cannot contradict what Allah ordered. That's why always you have to say, original reason. Is it to please Allah? Yes, it's phenomenal, it's good. If it is not, then your conclusion is absurd. It has no meaning. So, aql is so important that if we do not use it, Allah sees us as the lowliest of creatures. Allah calls us deaf and dumb. We talk about what is humanity, the ability to think and all this. No, it's the aql that makes us distinct from any other creation. We have the ability, inherent ability to use aql, unless we're crazy. And aql starts with iman, and aql starts with major premise and minor premise. If you're missing one of the premises, you put yourself as the premise. So, well, I don't use hadith. You know what you use? Shaitan or yourself. You're committing shirk. So once your intention is not good, right away, you're engaging in falsehood. Prophet Muhammad said, there are 4 signs that make someone a pure hypocrite. You say, well, who is the pure hypocrite? Of course, it's Shaitan, number 1, right? But how about Bani Israel? How about the hypocrisy that we are facing every day? How about the ones who took up arms against Abu Bakr, or against Usman, against Ali? What were they? How about the list that the Prophet had of munafiqun? Every word they spoke is a lie. So when they speak, he speaks, he lies. It's a very big deal. It's just like Shaitan. Shaitan is a liar, even when he makes a correct statement. That's Hadith. Just like Shaitan, a munafiq, somebody's intention is not good, every word he says is a falsehood. You know, how do you know? Because his intention is not good. That's the definition of false truth. Truth starts with good intention, true intention, which is to please Allah. So you don't have to nitpick. Whatever he speaks is a lie. Then when he makes a covenant, he's treacherous. He makes a promise, he breaks it. And when he argues, he's wicked and illogical. Have you ever argued online with one of these sheikhs or the influencers pretending to be Muslim? They're so vicious that they put Ben Shapiro to shame. Completely illogical. That's the characteristic of Shaitan and his followers of Bani Israel. And today, all the scholars, all the sensationalist scholars who are not in jail fall under that category. It's not very difficult to figure out. This is Islam. You start with good intention, and this is, by the way, a typical knowledge model. It's known in science. I will highlight whatever is new, but typically you have data, you have information, you have knowledge, and you decide afterwards. That's science. That's ilm. That's knowledge gathering. But new science eliminated the intention part. Islam has it. Islam, that's the foundation. That's the first hadith. But new science eliminated that. So they said that you have to have data, you have to have information, but what about the filter? How do you filter it? They have no criterion. Islam has given us criterion. You know what are those criteria? Remember, we talked about 2 points you have to have, major and minor. So all those idiots are vibrating, are saying that, oh, you don't need hadith. You cannot climb this graph. That's a scientific fraud if you are saying that you do not need hadith. You have to have 2 points. That's how you create a filter. First, Quran. That's your Furqan. That's the divider. That's how you call it information. If it doesn't pass that criterion, it's falsehood. Then, hadith, in the context of hadith, that gives you knowledge. Finally, aql. And that too has those 2 points. Again, so if you do not have Quran and Hadith both, you cannot go anywhere. You need that Quran and Hadith both always, at every step. Otherwise, you cannot decide. Your decision has no meaning. Allah said in 70:36, do not proceed unless you have full knowledge. This is the one you must do. Allah also said, Surah Nisa 59, obey Allah, obey Messenger. Not worship Allah and worship Messenger. And some idiots say, well, you are promoting shirk. It's not. Obey is not shirk. If you order obey your husband, does not mean you're committing shirk. You are following Allah's instruction. That's in Quran. Obey Allah, obey Messenger, obey the legitimate authority among you, which is Amir al-Mu'minin or your husband. Legitimate authority, not a boyfriend, not a president, Amir al-Mu'minin. Even then, Allah says, if there is a dispute, go back to Quran and Hadith. This is in Quran. So there is no escape. You always need Quran and Hadith both. Just Quran doesn't do it. That's a scientific fraud to say Quran is enough. But we have this Satanic model. That's anti-aql. How did he do? He disobeyed Allah. It's done. He already decided. He did not consult Allah. He did not go through this process of using filter. He did not collect data. He just decided he's going to disobey. And he assumed jinns are superior. Who gave me that idea? Did you check with Allah? No, that's not enough. He already went ahead. It's complete falsehood, but he assumed to be true. Then he said, that's not enough. I'll mislead man. What kind of idiot gives up all his future so he can feed his ego? What does he gain? Just use common sense. What does he gain by misleading man? But he does it. This is what Shaitan, how illogical Shaitan is. Then he finds excuses, justification. He said, well, how can I bow this head that was worshipping Allah to a mere human? Sounds logical, right? but it has no meaning. So this is the model Shaitan uses. He decides, he disinforms, makes a falsehood, and he creates opacity. Then he justifies. We have the classic example. Don't get excited. This was the Israeli one, but Muslims today are worse than Israelis. Invade Iraq was a decision. They planted this falsehood, Al-Qaeda and connection of Saddam Hussein and uranium enrichment, the yellow cake. Then they promoted Iraq invasion will bring peace. Remember what Netanyahu was saying? It reverberated around the region. Peace will come. Then when they are caught, nothing happens. So all removal of Saddam Hussein had to be done. It's a good thing. Shaitan is not very creative. His followers are the same. They follow the same discredited model. All you have to know is history a little bit and say, these guys are lying, but they don't do that. This is the nature of Shaitan. That's why there is no excuse. You cannot say, well, I was mistaken. No. Surah Mulk, verse 10, either you listen to the prophet or use your akal, or you burn in hellfire. They do none. They do not follow this model, and they do not use akal. That's why during the Iraq invasion, more non-Muslims were opposed than the Muslims. Muslims were jumping in joy. When I complained, one guy said, are you Shia? Or are you Sunni? Is that what you're doing? They do not use akal. They immediately assume that you have something vested in it. And all I said, it's not right to invade. And it was clearly a falsehood. But they don't want to use akal. So what happened historically? We have this akal process. We have Quran and Hadith. And we have phenomenal conclusion. What they do, they place, it used to be a third point. It could be Trinity, it could be Jesus, Son of God. For Shia people, it could be Ali. For Tabligh people, it could be Maulana Ilyas. Today, it could be ChatGPT, it could be Mufti Mink, it could be Yashir Qadhi. That's what they have done. So they said that. But the condition is, that's why you have to replace Hadith. And it turns out, Hadith is the most scientific book of biography. Most scientific in history of mankind. And that's the one that is disregarded. And who did they replace with? Mufti Mink and Yashir Qadhi and whatever. That's why there is no reprieve. Every conclusion they make has no meaning. Aphenomenal, that's what it means. We coined the term. It has no meaning. It might sound logical, sometimes it might be true. Even a dead clock is true two times a day. So what? It has no meaning. So when you're saying, Garil Maghdubi Alaihim wala Dhalin, who are those today? And this is the group I want to talk about. So that was the pattern. Now, what is the pattern? You see, even in the great fitna of Muawiyah and subsequent, they did not say there is a dispute about Prophet's statement. They knew. But now, they have created this dispute. These are, by the way, new Muslims. And they are fanatical. She actually called Book of Bukhari from Shaitan. And he says, on the other hand, he's a former gangster. Very popular. He said, Book of Bukhari was invented to serve Saudi government. That's how stupid we have become. And look at how many likes, 2,800. And all the Muslims are just excited to support this. Oh, well, mashallah, she's even white. Look at her. How convenient. But that's not enough. They may be mistaken, but this guy is not mistaken. He knows. These are the maghzub. Yasir Qadi, you might have heard that video, the audio. He's saying that Quran can be academically verified. By the way, the same guy said Quran has a question also. But Hadith cannot be academic. What on earth is academic in your mind, in your puny little stupid mind? What is academic? Shaitan's logic? Anybody with iota of conscience knows that Book of Hadith is the most authentic creation ever by human. Collection of Hadith is the most scientific in history of mankind. And he said, nobody in the academy affirms the Muslim Sunni science of Hadith. So all of a sudden, the most scientific way of collecting biography is a Muslim Sunni science for him. You see, these idiots do not know science, they do not know Islam, they do nothing. Anyone with iota of conscience should know this. He's marginalizing the most rigorous scientific process as Muslim science, Sunni science. Just like the other idiot calls it Salafi. Referring to Book of Bukhari, is it a Salafi act? You see how sinister it is? A lot more sinister than what Ben Shapiro and Benjamin Netanyahu could figure out. And he's saying, nobody. And it is considered to be completely discredited. Who on earth completely discredited? Who is your God? Who discredited? Show me one. And if you do not have the brain, or if you do not have the heart of deconstructing that discreditation, why are you breathing? Why are you there? With iota of iman, you see this complete falsehood. And what is it? He's doubling down. I am just being factual, as if you know what fact is. Do you know, stupid ass, what is factual? Do you know what is true? I have seen your video. I have seen your PhD thesis. 4 years ago, my good friend who used to work for BP sent your thesis to me. I said, look, he's talking about fitra, yet he does not define in his whole thesis. And thesis is the most important work of a person. It's so devoid of any logic, any scholarly act, that he sent me the whole thesis. I cannot find a simple answer. What I did, I responded with my mental health book that was co-authored by my son. He was 17-year-old. That had all the answers that he was seeking. And this idiot's PhD did not have it. And now you are telling us I'm being factual? No, you are just being a stupid ass. In his pathetic mindset, academic standard is different from Islamic standard. And what he likes the academic standard. Because they are white. How can I contradict them? And that must be superior. So when I'm facing white people, I have to speak white people's language, even though I know it's shaitan. So I have to pretend to be shaitan. He does not even give a chance. Is it possible that shaitans are those so-called academic? Is the falsehood? Do you not understand? And he said, I would be so embarrassed to use, Prophet said, Quran said, idiot. Years ago, I said, he said, complete travesty, that scientific work, your hard science, something that you have no idea about. Even in hard science, it's a travesty that we do not give reference to Quran and Hadith. Because those are the only two evidence there is. There's nothing else that is evident. We talk about science-based, evidence-based science. There's absolutely nothing that can be used as evidence other than Quran and Hadith. Remember, we talked about 2 points. There is no other two points. It cannot be Newton. It cannot be Einstein. It certainly cannot be Stephen Hawking, Darwin. Those are all registered, certified liars. And you are saying that those are the evidence. And you'd be embarrassed to talk about evidence as Quran and Hadith, because you're in a state of sujood to these white people. So some people say that maybe scientists would know better. Sadly, that's not true either. Muslim scientists today, we are not even Nobel laureates. You would not find a single mention of quoted Quran, not one quoted Quran, later on Hadith, while proclaiming all real knowledge comes from Allah. They all know that. They all profess that all real knowledge comes from Allah. But when it comes to science, their God is Einstein or Newton or whatever white man tells them. This disconnection is in every branch of education. Every branch. And that has happened. We pinpointed. First happened with dogma, with Roman Catholic Church. Then it happened with Newton. Complete disconnection. Be an idiot. We don't care. But don't lecture us that you are being truthful, because that's Satanic. Myself, as a scientist, as an engineering professor, as somebody who has published some 800 papers and books, I veered away from that dogmatic process of giving evidence to Newton, Einstein, Darwin, whatever. I said I would stick to true major premise, true minor premise, and true logical conclusion. I'll stick to real evidence. And what the other real evidence you have than Quran and Hadith? So right here, Quran is the first one, Hadith is the second one. Only then you have logical. And I have used that in each of my books. You can check it out. That's why all my conclusions, right in the beginning, I said, you cannot find one logical fallacy. Right in the beginning, I said, you cannot find. And these are not published from Somalia. They are all published from US. How many books have you written, Yasir Qadri? How many even paper you have read on science? So don't lecture us on logic. and I live this. All my books have used the same technique. Quran has a starting point. I can open any book, I will tell you which verse of Quran inspired this chapter. Every chapter. All my books. So this is what I've said in every lecture. It could be in China, it could be in Hungary. I always mention this Bukhari's work as the standard for how to do research. Remember we talked about data, information, knowledge, and decision? Look at his process that he used. He memorized with chain 700,000 hadiths, with all the chains. If that's not by grace of Allah, what could be? 700,000 with all the chain going back. Then he filtered and he boiled it down to 7,000. 1%. That's called research yasikadi. This is called scientific research. So don't spew out nonsense from a rear end. It really stinks. And you're calling that, we cannot ever produce that as the evidence, because the white man would hurt, it would hurt their feeling. How much idiotic you can be. In history, the most important research undertaking was compilation of Quran. And you call that, oh, there's the book of Osmani. He calls it Osmani version of Quran. And he accepts that that's true, even though he lied about it before also. The most important undertaking in human history, research project, was compilation of Quran. It's a very big deal, because it will stay forever. And do you know what that Quran was? It did not even have vowels. It was word of mouth. Nobody knew from the writing how to pronounce if you did not have hadith. It could be Alhamdulillah, it could be Alhamdulillah, it doesn't matter. It did not have vowels. And you are saying that is acceptable, but hadith is not? What kind of idiocy is that? But most importantly, for our context, individually, there has never been another research more important than Book of Hadith that was done by Bukhari. The science behind it is unprecedented. And it's integral to Tawhid. Without that, we do not have even Quran. Not a single verse of Quran can be interpreted without Hadith. By the way, every Hadith relates to a verse of Quran, except the first one, which talks about intention. Ownership of intention is so central that Allah did not even use the word niya in his book. And that had to be in the first hadith of recount collected in Book of Bukhari. So with Allah's grace, we have Quran. It's a scientific fact. The oldest book, divine book. It's the only divine book that is intact in its original form. But if you do not accept hadith, you do not even know how to pronounce Surah Fatiha. Who told you? Your own Osmani book did not have any vowel. So if you are to reject hadith, Quran is right gone. By the way, by definition, Quran is Hadith. It's recounted by, narrated by Prophet. It did not come down as a tablet. Sure enough, the oldest book intact is Quran. Second oldest book intact is the book of Hadith in its original language. There's no other book. Only then you get a phenomenal conclusion. And again, we repeat, your intention has to be good. By the way, the word deductive logic, Ikra literally means deduction. Deduction requires, not read. You should know that. Ikra is not read. It would be absurd for a prophet to be told to read. He did not know how to read. Ikra is to deduce. Quran literally means collection of deductions. Quran is the same root. And deduction does not happen with 1 point. Deduction is 2 points. For a prophet, here's the second point. So everybody who is pretending that we don't Hadith, he is being the second point himself. He's replacing himself with, he's replacing prophet by himself. Each Quranist, each of these idiots who think Hadith is not relevant, is putting himself as in the position of prophet. Second point is, without Hadith, not a single verse of Quran can be interpreted. This is a scientific fact. Both deductive and inductive logics have a major and minor points, cognition exercise. As I mentioned, you cannot even think. No thought process can begin without 2 points. I talked about deductive and inductive logic. Check it out. At least have the brain of collecting that information. What is deductive logic? It's not very hard science. They both need 2 points. And you're discarding 1 point, which is Hadith. Third, and the most important point, most obvious point, you think these people don't know. Quran itself is entirely narrated, hadasa, by Prophet. So if you are saying man narration is not acceptable, which verse of Quran was narrated by in Jibril to you, you idiot? It was narrated by Prophet. How do you know? If you discard all the chain, you have to discard this. Who can claim that who talked to Prophet? Nobody. So you have to believe that this chain of narrators were correct. Otherwise, you cannot say, you cannot even pronounce Alhamdulillah. How do you know? That was never revealed. If you think Hadith is not authentic because it's narrated by humans, consider Quran. The original version had no vowels. It is all narration by humans. So Yasikadi is here is vibrating like a TikTok imam. All he needs is some tattoo or maybe some headscarf and paint your face white so you're more credible. Nothing in Quran can be interpreted without Hadith. But take some glaring examples. Quran 465 says, you have to take it. Prophet as the judge. How on earth do you take Prophet as the judge if you do not have Hadith? If you do not have Hadith, how do you do it? It's not enough that you take him as a judge. Allah used the word surrender twice. You take it with peace, with very submissive, 2 times. And you want to discard it altogether. You know why? Because you want to worship yourself. It's not enough that you are worshiping shaitan, you are worshiping yourself. Then, 459, Allah ordering us, you have to obey Allah, the messenger, and those in authority among you. Those in authority you can know. And it is not your president, it's not your cult leader. It's the legitimate ruler, Amirul Mu'minin. But even then, if you have a dispute, if you have a disagreement, you refer it to Allah and Messenger. Does it say refer to Quran? Why is it the Messenger? So how do you know what Messenger said? Allah said it is in Quran, okay? But how about the Messenger? How do you refer to him without Hadith? So overall, stop being a stupid ass. This is a scientific fraud you are committing. Assalamu alaikum.